Meditation. It's something that I don't do, but should really consider. But you know who else meditates? The Zen Mages. That's right, in this episode we're going to be diving into the sub-archetype of the Iron Chain Mages, the Zen Mages. As a super quick rundown, the Iron Chain Mages are crazed lunatics obsessed with power and casting spells. They go from power-hungry mages to true forces to be reckoned with in the presence of magical essence. The Zen Mages are far more relaxed, and while they are still obsessed with power, they don't show it that much. The Zen Mages started off as a small group of 5 Iron Chain Mages that swore the art of combat would not be a part of their daily life, and that being one with mana was a curse. As such, they abandoned the Iron Chain Mage Guild and founded their own guild deep in the mountains, isolated from any other mage group. Over time, they built up a following of power-hungry but level-headed mages that wanted to hone their abilities in the art of protection. As you could probably guess from that little intro, the Zen Mages are extremely defense-focused. They still use the same mechanics like Spell Break, Effect Break, and can use effects with mana, but they also like to use Holy Barrier, Damage Barrier, and Spell Barrier. And without further ado, let's get into it. Kicking it off with the minions, they have no attack! This makes them sitting ducks against pretty much everything else, but in the presence of magic, they can actually hold their own. A bit. This guy gets +1/0 for 2 turns whenever you use a spell, so he goes from being a 0-2 unit to a maximum of a 2/2 unit. Not bad. Next up we've got the other minion we're talking about today. This guy is a little bit more strange, but whenever you play a spell, it gains an effect of dealing 1 damage to a battling card. This is a little niche, but this is effect damage, so things like Damage Barrier and Spell Barrier have no effect on it. Next, let's get into their mids. These guys are a whole lot tougher than their minion counterparts, but have roughly the same offensive capabilities. We'll start off with the Barrier Carver. Whenever you play a spell, you can give an ally Damage Barrier or Spell Barrier for the turn. And the other mid is a solid stat stick that can give itself +0/+2 for 2 mana this turn. Not bad at all. Lastly, let's go over some of the bosses, specifically the last 3 remaining founders of the Zen Mages. The original Zen Mage, the guy who started everything, didn't live long after the creation of the Zen Mages. No one knew why or how, but he died, and the only hint they had to go off of was a purple rune carved into his forehead. Anyway, the other founder of the Zen Mages we won't be covering today ventured off into the woods and never came back. No one has heard from him since. But getting into the Zen Mages that are alive and somewhat well, we've got Tezma. He's the Guardian of Magics, and he can put allies into a meditative state. He's got Equalize, and if you pay 4 mana, he can put an ally into a super secret meditative state, causing them to be unable to be a direct target for spells and attacks. Provoke pierces this effect though, so be careful. But during this meditative state, the effective unit is unable to attack, use their effect, or really do anything. And they also have Spell Break that heals them for 2 health and gives them a Damage Barrier this turn. Lore-wise, Tezma is probably the only Zen Mage anyone outside of the Zen Mage circle anyone cares about. He is known throughout the land as a self-sacrificing mage that cures insomnia with his mystical abilities of ancient tradition. He hasn't fought in any wars, isn't particularly a good person, but he's alright. Anyway, next up is Yin and Yang. These guys are tough. They've got bulk 2, meaning they reduce every instance of damage they take by 2. But they also have an effect break, gain bulk 1, meaning that if you use mana to activate another ally's effect, they get bulk 3, and as if that wasn't enough, they also have a spell break that gives another unit bulk 1 this turn. Lore-wise, these guys are a little strange. Both of them were high-ranking chain mages, but ever since the Zen Mages came along, they swore to put all of their aggressive energies into defense and protection. They also got killed by the Feaster of Hope after treading into the Cursed Kingdom, seeking an ancient tome of power. Their bodies were discovered years later by a daring explorer who promptly brought their remains back to civilization. There weren't enough remains to make both of them whole again, but there was just enough to shove both of their remains together and make a new, thing. And that's exactly what happened. And finally, Fret. He's the most stable out of any of the Iron Chain or even Zen Mages, and while that's a really low bar, it's at least something worthwhile he's done in his life. In-game, he's basically a black hole for spells. Both his Spell Break and Effect Break effects are the same. They both force the next spell used by the enemy to be used on Fret. He's got a lot of health and heals himself by 3 and gains Holy Barrier when both his Spell and Effect Break effects have been used. Lore-wise, he's nothing too special. He still went insane when he was an Iron Chain Mage, but he never killed his family, loved ones, or attacked random people in the pursuit of power. In fact, it was quite the opposite. He was a magnet for bad luck and crossfire. He would frequently get hit with stray spells, bullets, and basically anything that wasn't meant for him. But instead of becoming more careful, he made this his entire personality and now uses his gift to protect people. Now let's wrap this episode up with a stat overview. As you could have guessed, their stats are flipped from the Iron Chain Mages. They are not very aggressive or counter-focused, but they are real defensive and utility-focused. In terms of what they're good at, they're similar to the Iron Chain Mages. Their effects are their greatest asset, they have a super high combo, but they have far less power and are more difficult. Overall, I think putting them right here serves them justice. Anyway, that's gonna wrap it up for this episode. Thank you all for watching, and yeah, leave a comment or something. Later.